We heard shots from behind the building, like they bust the windows out first from behind the building. And then they had shot our classroom door down. And a man opened the door, he was like, "Y'all finna die today."
Everyone who survived here is gonna take home trauma. Here is a safe place where kids go to learn, to grow, to develop, and something like this happens. It's just heartbreaking.
Tonight, the FBI is investigating a deadly school shooting in St. Louis that left 3 people dead, including the shooter. In the last hour, we learned that one of the victims was a health teacher. Family has identified her as Jean Kuchka. We also know another was a teenage girl. The third person who died was the gunman. Thanks for being with us. I'm Mike Bush.
And I'm Kelly Jackson. At least 8 other people were sent to the hospital with injuries ranging from gunshots to shrapnel, even cardiac arrest. And we are waiting to hear from St. Louis police with the latest at any moment now. The shooting happened just before 9:30 this morning at the Central Visual and Performing Arts High School. That's in South St. Louis. It shares a campus with the Collegiate School of Medicine and Bioscience. Police soon engaged the shooter, who later died. That person has not been identified, but we have learned it is a man around 20 years old.
We have team coverage of this tragic story tonight. We'll have reaction from city leaders, witnesses, and families. So let's continue our coverage right now with Mercedes McKay.
She is just down the street at Schnucks, which has been the first place parents were asked to pick up their kids. Mercedes, what did you witness in that first hour?
Mike and Kelly, it was a pretty heartbreaking and chaotic scene here this morning. I actually had to park a couple blocks away from the school just because of the sheer amount of people that were coming in this direction. As you can see, the Schnucks behind me, it's a pretty cleared scene. There is one police command center car still here, and the flag is at half staff. And take a look at just how close this is to the school. And earlier today, I saw parents running to this parking lot, just trying to feel a sense of relief when they finally saw their children. Now, even a couple of hours after the shooting happened, people were still in the parking lot hugging and crying with one another. I spoke with multiple different parents and students throughout the morning. Many did believe at the beginning it was an active shooter drill because they've been doing those so often. I also spoke with a freshman who had to escape by jumping out of the window. A mom told me that what was running through her head when she heard the news was just heartbreak. Here's what both of them had to say.
We just thought it was a regular intruder drill, but then when we started hearing sirens outside and the teachers started to even get scared, we knew that this wasn't just a regular drill and it was real.
Hard part of it is I just put her in school just a couple years ago. She's primarily been homeschooled. So that was, something else going through my head is, did we make the right choice? Couldn't believe that it would happen here, of course.
Both students I spoke to told me they still don't feel safe at school anymore. And I'll send it back to you, Mike and Kelly, back in the studio so we can hear from that presser.
All right, thank you, Mercedes. We want to take you live to St. Louis Police headquarters, where they are holding a news conference with the very latest on this tragedy.
In a gunfight. At 9:25, the call comes in for the suspect being down. At 9:32, he's secured, and at 9:52, the building is cleared with an initial sweep. That sweep was followed up by the SWAT team, again by the bomb dog, and then some others. After that, we allowed our investigators and our evidence technicians into the building. But we wanted to make sure you were aware of the timeliness of the response. I can't say enough how well the officers did. Getting there on scene as quickly as they did, making entry, locating the suspect, not just by hearing the gunfire, but by talking to kids and teachers as they were leaving, getting some idea based on a description of where they last saw that suspect, so that they could take some kind of action to stop that threat. Our victims, the 2 decedents, one is a 61-year-old white female. She was transported and pronounced at a local hospital. The second is a 16-year-old black female. She remained on the scene, was pronounced there. The third is a 16-year-old black male, suffered a gunshot wound to the leg. He's in stable condition at a local hospital. The fourth is a 16-year-old black female who suffered a graze wound to the leg and is stable. The 15-year-old is a black male. The fifth victim, a gunshot wound to both hands and his jaw. He's stable. The sixth victim is a 15-year-old black male who suffered a gunshot wound to an arm and is stable. The next victim is a 15-year-old Hispanic female who suffered abrasions to her face and her knee, and she's stable. The next victim is a 16-year-old black female with a fractured ankle, and she's stable. And the last victim is a 15-year-old black male who suffered abrasions to his face, and he's stable. The suspect in this incident is Orlando Harris. He's a black male, 19 years of age, and graduated from the high school last year. He lives in the 9000 block of Pennsylvania with family members, and he has no prior criminal history. At this time, we're working with our Force Investigation Unit and other detectives to try and come up with what might have led him to this. There's suspicions that there may be some mental illness that he was experiencing. We're working on developing that information right now. The investigation's still ongoing. We'll provide that information as best we can as time goes on. Any victims, any individuals, students, staff, or others in the community who are experiencing difficulties trying to process all this, if they're in need of immediate help, they can call 988, and that will hook them up to the behavioral health resource group here, and that group will be able to connect them to some local services here for assistance. Dr. Adams and the school group, I'm sure, will be working to facilitate some kind of assistance for students and staff as well, and we'll be doing the same thing for our employees as well. At this time, I'd like to bring up Chief Jenkerson, who will talk a little bit about the fire department and emergency medical services and their response to this scene. Sorry.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, everyone. As soon as this was a confirmed shooting inside the school, the MCI, or mass casualty incident, was radioed across, which brought a large response to this area. Everything else became secondary in the city. The plan that was in place worked with the resources that were put on the scene between the EMS side and the fire side. To see this plan work, to see that something that was schooled and trained for to actually come to fruition, and as chaotic as it may have seemed to the people on the scene, especially the media, this plan worked. You can see the efforts that went into the massive amount of training that took place to provide the response that this took. So this is a very much a complimentary statement to all the first responders, police, fire, EMS. Police department did just a tremendous job with getting in there quick. We had medics in there with them assisting with getting the patients out. So it worked. At this time, we're going to do a hot wash on it and see what we can do better, but everything worked as planned.
Good evening, everybody. Jay Greenberg with the FBI. We're here doing everything we can, along with all the other partners, to help St. Louis Metro PD with the investigation at this time. So a couple of quick announcements. The first is we have started up a digital media collection website. That can be reached at fbi.gov/Central VPA. So anybody who has photos, videos, any digital evidence can turn that in at that website, so that we have it in the case file and we can get that to St. Louis Metro in an organized way. Secondly, we're bringing victim specialists in to augment everything the city is doing. So anybody who needs services can reach our services combined at the number which the chief previously provided. And then I just have one request for anybody out there who has been impacted or might need help. Please do use that number, but also, since this happened this morning, we have received an uptick in additional allegations of potential school shooters around here. So we think what's happening is that likely there are some of our kids who have seen this, and they're thinking about it right now, and so they have started talking about this or sharing this, whether they think it's a joke or it's serious. We would just ask everybody, please help the area deal with this appropriately. Please have a conversation with your kid if they're old enough to have a device, and make sure that any hoax or any joke that they're sending about school shooting right now will be taken incredibly seriously. We would ask that the volume of that drop as opposed to rise after this. So thank you.
Kim Gardner, Circuit Attorney for the City of St. Louis. Just want to extend my condolences to the family and the loved ones of the students and the teachers that are hurt and lost their lives today. I want to pray for our community right now. As the Circuit Attorney for the City of St. Louis, we are working with the Force Investigation Unit to find out what happened, as well as the other law enforcement partners, the FBI and other federal agencies. I want to thank the hard-working men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department for their hard work, fire, EMS, and all of the first responders for responding and saving as many people as they saved in this tragic situation. But I want to first say we have to pray for our community and come together. And let's pray for these kids and get them the help they need to get past this.
Are there any questions? Or?
Chief, how do you get in?
So we're not going to go through how we got in. You can understand that we want to try and make schools a hard target. And so to give the answer to the exam is really kind of offering an opportunity for somebody else who would want to try to get into a school.
Well, can you at least tell us, we've heard, I don't know if this is confirmed, that the security guards did not have guns. They had a flashlight and a nightstick. Did you get through a checkpoint where they had guns?
That I don't know. So, but that'll all come out in the investigation. Not all of the public safety school security officers are armed. That would be a question for the.
Should they be?
Well, it may not be a bad idea to have the security officers armed at those schools, but they've got the doors locked. They've got the metal detectors. They're taking all the reasonable precautions. We'll be meeting with them after we have some time to talk about opportunities to make their facilities harder to get into. But if there's somebody who has a will, they're going to figure it out. We don't want to make it easy for them. But we just got to do the best we can to extend that time it takes them to get into the building to buy us time to respond and get there. So,
Chief, I don't know if this is for you or maybe Special Agent Greenberg. There was an active scene. It looked like some sort of raid at a house. You mentioned the 9000 block of Pennsylvania. We were there. We saw a bunch of people in ATF jackets going in and out. Was that in connection to the incident at the school? We just want to confirm.
Right, that is connected to it as part of the investigation that's going on. So that is the suspect's residence. We just ask they should respect the privacy of the family without giving out the exact address. But that was part of the investigation. I wanted to see if there's any other evidence of that.
Did the suspect have a note, a list of past school shootings? I've heard from some investigators that was among the suspicions that he had a list in his vehicle of other school shootings and the school shooters.
Right, and all this will come out in the investigation. So when the detectives go through all that and they get that information, we'll have more to put out. But it's going to be a while before this report's completed, as you can imagine.
But can you say yes or no on a list?
But I am not really sure of what might have been there. I know that there's some evidence that was taken out of the vehicle. It's going to be handed over to the Force Investigation Unit, and they'll examine that. But right now, I don't have anything else for you.
What other information can you offer up about the shooter? We've seen this before where there's no prior criminal history,
Sure.
But we've seen a background of social media in the Highland Park shooting that just happened. It was a former student, no prior criminal history. What do you guys know, and what are you working with the FBI when it comes to social media and that aspect of it? You mentioned mental illness as well. Can you elaborate on some of these things?
Sure. So, one of the challenges that law enforcement and employers and others face is individuals who suffer from mental illness. When they're being treated, they're medicated, they could be a normal, productive citizen holding many different types of employment in the community or be students in our schools. So we want to be careful not to put somebody over to a particular area and treat them in a certain way if they are medicated and they're doing well. that's one of the reasons for the background checks for purchasing guns.
Do you think guns are too easily accessible in St. Louis? We've had over 160 homicides in the city this year already. It's October. What do you think about this, especially with the circuit attorney here today? We haven't had a lot of arrests on some of these homicides. How easy is it to get guns, and how big of a problem is this?
It's very easy to get guns. I've said it before. The gun laws in Missouri are very broad. Allow people to have weapons. They can carry them openly down any street. And there's really nothing that we can do. If somebody walks down a main street with a rifle, we've got no cause to go talk to them. So that makes it very challenging in an urban environment, and it's very difficult. Guns can be either purchased legally. They are then either stolen in a burglary or they're stolen in a car clotting, and at that point it could be used for illegal activity. And that's one of the greatest challenges that we face. And when we catch somebody with a firearm that's illegally possessed, maybe they're a convicted felon, we could take it to the federal court system or to the circuit court system, or if they're involved in some kind of violent crime and they're possessing a firearm, we certainly take it to the circuit attorney's office for prosecution. But the gun laws are a great challenge for us in an urban environment.
Is there anything failing you?
Thank you, everybody.
How did the suspect get a long rifle in the school? Did he conceal it in a joke bag?
Oh, no. He just, when he entered, it was out. There was no mystery about what was going to happen. He had it out and entered in an aggressive, violent manner. Yeah.
Safe to say none of the remaining victims is in life-threatening situation.
Not that we're aware of, no. They all
Confirm the
appear to be the
victims' names who are
deceased.
deceased? It's already on social media. It's
Sure.
already out. Can you please confirm for everyone on the record?
Sure. We're not prepared to do that. The families and the schools ask us to hold off, so we're going to respect that for the moment. But I'm hoping that the next day or so we'll be able to provide that information to you. I understand and I appreciate that you all don't repeat that out. And that's the one difference between you all and social media is the professional journalism. You don't put that out. I appreciate that you don't.
How proud are you of your officers?
I'm extremely proud of my officers.
They didn't wait for a plan. They went in.
Right, and
4 minutes. They were in 4 minutes.
They were. I sent a message out earlier today thanking them and commending them. I went to South Patrol earlier for a roll call and addressed those who were making relief and those who were coming on. They did an outstanding job. Like I told them, hey, the call went out. They drove there. They put the car in park. They drew a weapon. They went into the building. There was no sidewalk conference. There was no discussion. There was no, hey, where are you going to? They just went right in. And while they're inside the building, going through hallways or whatever, that's when they started linking up with one another. So very proud of them. We had commanders go in. We had sergeants go in. We had officers go in. Some off duty. Some were in T-shirts, but they had their vests on and identify the ballistic vests. So they did an outstanding job. I couldn't say any more about them. It was just amazing what they did. And like I told them today, roll call, hey, this is just how St. Louis officers are. They're not going to hesitate. They're not going to wait when they know that there's a threat out there.
Worse?
This could have been much worse. The individual had almost a dozen 30-round, high-capacity magazines on them. So that's a whole lot of victims there. But because of the quick response, that suspect didn't have the opportunity to turn this into, it's certainly tragic for the families and it's tragic for our community, but it could have been a whole lot worse.
When do you expect to tell us how the suspect got inside that school?
Sir, I don't know that I ever will. Really, I don't want to make this easy for anybody else. And we're going to work with the school district to try and see how we can harden the facility and our private schools in the area as well to try and make their buildings more difficult to get in. I don't want to give anybody an answer to the test.
George, can you talk about security measures moving forward for other SLPS schools tomorrow, next day, next week? What's happening? When is CVPA and Collegiate coming back online? What's the plan?
Dr. Adams and high-level people with the district are in a meeting right now actually discussing those very things. Our security personnel, we're very proud of how they performed. The chief spoke of police officers. We had the 7 personnel working in the building who did a wonderful job getting the alarm sounded quickly so that response, that fast response could happen both from the police and also from our response teams who were among the first on the scene as well. So that was just more well done work by a lot of people. As far as school tomorrow and what's going on next there, that meeting right now is being held to kind of to figure all that out. There are a lot of moving parts to this, obviously, the investigation in the building, as well as just the well-being of these students and of these staff. And that's the most important thing. You mentioned going forward. The most important thing to us right now is the well-being of our students and our staff and their families going forward. We've got counselors and social workers that are already reaching out. They were at Gateway today when those buses arrived with those kids, and those people are going to be a part of their lives for as long as they need them. And that is something that our families need to know, is there will be any kind of help available that they need for as long as they need it.
Chief, did you have officers respond from a nearby funeral? I mean, were they in that position where they dropped everything they were doing, grieving a fellow officer, and ran to the school?
Yes, we had some down the street at a local church there for a funeral. Others came from the area station, which isn't too far from that location, which is also convenient. And then others just heard it on the radio. So we're really lucky. And then our SWAT team was actually together in a group doing some training, and so they were able to load up and get down there right away, and they performed the secondary sweep of the building. But one other thing, you all know that we're short-staffed in communications, and it's difficult for them to keep up with a call volume. But I want to give kudos to the staff who work day watch in communications, because here they are juggling multiple districts at the same time, and this active shooting comes out. And so they're trying to take care of the officers who are calling in locations, directions, description, asking for resources. They never dropped the ball. They stood tall, handled all the radio calls. As the phone calls came in with people, kind of hiding in different locations, we're over here, don't let them forget about us, we're in room whatever. They fielded all those calls, pushed them out to us, so our officers can go locate those individuals and escort them out of the building. So it was certainly a team effort by the police department, along with other, the fire department and our other federal partners that really helped bring this thing to the best conclusion that we could have expected.
Can you talk generally about the officers going in? There's an 8-minute gap between when the officers arrived on scene and when the suspect was apprehended when they had that shootout. I know that you can't go through all of your standard operating procedures, but can you explain to viewers why it took 8 minutes for you guys to get to the suspect and where he was in the building? Any details like that?
8 minutes isn't very long. So, and if you've seen the high school, it's big. And remember, there's only a couple entrances and exits, and there's 700 kids and 80 staff coming out. So you're kind of pushing against the tide. Of course, when they see an officer with a firearm, they're putting their hands up and they're trying to make way. So it's not easy to get to the location. They're stopping, they're talking to people. So 8 minutes is not long at all. That's really a very, very brief period of time from the minute that they arrived. And when they're arriving, it doesn't mean that they're staying outside the front door. It means that they're just now pulling up. So they got to stop, get out. I saw a number of weapons that were seized by our Force Investigation Unit. Their shotguns, their rifles, and all that. So they got to pull these things out of the lock inside the vehicle because it's secured there. So that takes half a minute. So 8 minutes is very quick. They did an outstanding job, and I don't know how they could have done better. It was great.
George, we know this is early, and from the school district standpoint, can you speak to parents who are wondering what are the preliminary safety lessons, measures learned from this? We know this is all early in its hours.
It's way too early to tell. I mean, obviously, as the chief said, our people will go through those same sorts of things as far as looking back at everything and assessing and putting it all through the wash, so to speak. But it's way too early right now to talk about this. We're still just in a regroup phase, and really we're focused on helping people recover from this right now. And we'll get to all that. That's important, but what's important right now is students, staff, families feeling comfortable again and feeling safe. And I can assure you that we are doing everything we can to make sure that their mental health is taken care of, and for those families to know that school is still the safest place your kid's going to be all day in this city. And we're going to make sure that remains the case.
One final question for me, Mr.
You've been watching a news conference from St. Louis Police Headquarters Interim Police Chief Michael Sack praising the officers for their quick actions to stop the shooter. We do know for the first time the suspect. He's 19-year-old Orlando Harris, who graduated from Central Visual and Performing Arts last year. He has no prior criminal history, but the suspect, once again, 19-year-old Orlando Harris, who had a dozen high-capacity magazines on him. So the quick actions of police might have saved a lot of other kids today.
Yes, the interim chief saying he praised officers who went into the building without hesitation. They went toward the danger. He also mentioned, unfortunately, the two victims who did not make it out. A 61-year-old woman who we had mentioned, Jean Kushka, who is a teacher at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School, and the other victim was a 16-year-old girl. The other victims who most are in stable condition, there are 8 students, all in their teens, and they all should be able to make it through okay. And he also mentioned that he will not specify how the suspect got into the building because it is an ongoing investigation.
Plus, they don't want to give other possible shooters any ideas. All right, we are running out of time, but let's get to Jim for a quick forecast. Jim.
Yeah, thank you guys. So just a real quick weather here. We've got some shower activity already beginning to develop, but most of that rain comes a little bit later tonight. Let's zoom into that Doppler weather radar. You can see some approaching even Farmington now throughout Franklin County, and it's kind of spotty, but it's increasing. And we'll see that rain shower activity increase as we head throughout the evening hours. Nothing too terribly heavy, not expecting severe weather, but maybe some downpours after midnight. But this evening, just spotty showers in here, but then thunder and rain and downpours tomorrow. That's a weather alert day, 59 in the afternoon. And then we clear up as we head toward Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're cooler in the 60s. Chance of rain, though, over the weekend.
All right, Jim, thanks. We will continue to monitor this story and follow it. There's going to be more on NBC Nightly News. And then, of course, we have much more local news on all of this coming up tonight.
We're